Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the kitchen and we are getting ready to make a delicious coffee cake in a Bundt pan with a crumb cake center. So if you're interested in making this recipe, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. I think we've got everything laid out here, ready to go. Today, I am in the kitchen and I am getting ready to make 2 coffee cakes. Now, they're both going to be the same kind, but I wanted to bring you along because this is a really delicious coffee cake. I had made it a month or so ago and just got a lot of rave reviews, and I thought this is a good one to share. I have made this a long time ago, but hadn't made it for several years. And then I decided, oh, I need to make that one that would be quick and easy to make because I was going somewhere with it. And it ended up being better than I remembered. And I think part of it was because I was using my own cake mix. So I'm going to walk you through how to make this. I have switched it up a little bit and have included a crumb cake center, which makes it even better than just the cinnamon streusel. So here's how we make it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the crumb cake center. And again, I am going to be making 2, but I'm going to be telling you the instructions for just one. And when you see the printed version at the end of the video or on my Blue Rooster Farm Facebook page, it will have just a single recipe for the coffee cake. So for the streusel, let me grab my ingredients over here, get them a little bit closer. Have you guys been enjoying this spring-like weather? I know lots of people across the Midwest have had this, and boy, it feels like spring. Tomorrow we're supposed to get storms, but we need rain. We just don't want any tornadoes. And you know, if you live in Missouri, you know Missouri is kind of known as Tornado Alley, especially in the southwestern part of Missouri. And during this time of year, it's just kind of a thing. So I hope the weather where you're at is very nice, and I hope you're getting excited about spring too. I know I need to still put my sweet potatoes in some water and start getting them rooted. I keep forgetting. I think about it at night, and then it's like, okay, the first thing I'll do in the morning is go down in the basement and get some sweet potatoes and put them in water, and then I forget. Now I'm remembering now, but I just can't stop and go get those right now. And of course, like all years throughout the summer, we'll be going out in the garden. I will surely be canning quite a bit of stuff this year. I know I made a lot of canning videos last year. So whenever I make something different than I made last year, I'll put it on video. If it's something I've already made a video on, I won't be videotaping. So you could always go back to last year's videos and find a whole bunch of recipes for canning and preserving garden produce. We go through it. That's basically what we eat. Every week we have to haul down boxes of jars to our basement because we've been opening up jars for every meal. And it's very nice to have all of that food. We know where it came from. We know that there's no pesticides on it. And we can it makes groceries so much cheaper for us. And looking at the grocery stores when I go in, it's just, I cannot believe the prices. So we're very fortunate to have the ability to have our own garden and to grow things. So I think there's a lot of people looking into growing things this coming summer. And if you are, I hope you join us this summer so that you can see how we garden. Well, getting back to our recipe, I'm going to make the crumb filling first. And for the crumb filling, for your single recipes, what you're going to need is a half a cup of brown sugar. You're going to need 1/4 of a cup of sugar. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And since I'm making a double batch, I'm going to get a tablespoon and a teaspoon, because a tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, and then 1 more teaspoon makes 4. We're going to mix that in and add 1 1/4 cup of flour. Now, of course, yours is not going to be as much as mine since this is double the batch, but mine, of course, is filling this bowl up. We've got a lot of crumb topping here. And this is not going to be the topping of our coffee cake. It's going to be the center. And I tell you, it tastes really good in this coffee cake. So just get that brown sugar and white sugar and flour mixed really nicely. We're also going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And that is one thing I didn't bring. I'll be right back. No matter how much I plan, there's always something that I forget to put on the table here, but we'll get it. So 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'll add 1/2. Now, after you have this mixed up nicely, you are going to take a stick of butter that is melted, and you are going to add it to this mixture. And my butter's starting to cool off a little bit. Getting a little bit solid. That will be okay. You know, whenever I make these videos for you guys, I try to get everything laid out first and get it all prepared. Sometimes I'm not as good at that if it's something that I've just all of a sudden decided to make, and I think, well, let me just pull out my camera and let you come along, and then I could edit stuff out. But just the preparing of a video, just getting all the ingredients out like this and making sure the lighting is good, making sure I've got my microphone on. I tell you, that is one of the biggest things that I worry about, is doing a whole video and then realizing I didn't have my microphone turned on. All right, I think I've got this pretty good. Now, I have in the past done a little section without my microphone being turned on, and I was able to voice over, but doing a whole video, I think that would be really hard. Okay. I think I'm going to get my Danish dough hook because it will cut down into this a little easier. And this is a Danish dough hook. It's just for thicker batters. And it is a strong wire. And I like to use this when I'm making a sticky, loose dough, like a soft bread dough or a biscuit dough. So it works well for things like this because the wire is stronger than that on a regular whisk. And so it incorporates things nicely. Get the lumps, and I'm going to set this aside. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add the nuts to this. Sometimes I just sprinkle them on top of the crumbs, but I'm going to go ahead and just mix them right in. And you're going to add 1/4 cup of chopped nuts. I'm using English walnuts here. And that makes it really yummy. Okay, That looks pretty good. We'll give it a stir right before we put it on the coffee cakes too. Now to the coffee cake. And the main ingredient for this coffee cake, this is a heavy jar. Oh, I filled it up today. This is my cake mix that I make from scratch, and I have a recipe and a video on how I do it. I'll put a link right up here somewhere. Also in the description box, I'll try to remember to put a link. But this is something that saves me a lot of time and money when I need a cake mix to add to some recipe. Now, I don't just make this as a white or yellow cake mix. You could, but I don't. I usually have my own favorite recipe for those kinds of cakes. But when I have a recipe that it is asking for a box of cake mix, like this recipe uses a box of cake mix. I had those cookie bars that I shared with you just about a week ago. It needed a box of cake mix. I make a earthquake cake that needs a chocolate cake mix, and I have a chocolate one too. But there's several recipes that I make that need a box of cake mix. And so I don't want to go to the grocery store and buy one, because if I do, a lot of times they'll become outdated on the shelf, or it has things in it that I really don't want to have in my food, some preservatives and things like that. And this right here will last for a long time on my shelves because it is just flour, sugar, cornstarch, salt, and baking powder. So it's nothing in here that will go bad. The baking powder may lose some of its power, or its, I guess, its ability to rise, but you can always add fresh if you haven't used it for a long time, and that would be fine too. But this is what the main ingredients for this coffee cake is. So you just take a box of cake mix. It can be a yellow or a white, either one. This one calls for a yellow cake mix, but either one would be fine. I found that the white cake mixes and the yellow cake mixes are basically the same, only you just added egg whites to the white, and you add both the egg whites and the yolk to the yellows. So what we're going to do is we are going to measure out what would be equivalent to a cake mix. And this one says that for a regular cake mix, to use 4.5 cups of this mix. Now, sometimes if I'm making something like those bar cookies that I made the other day, I knew that we weren't adding any liquid. It was just going to be oil and eggs. And I knew that it could get really, really thick. So I weighed my flour mixture, and then I looked at up on the internet what a cake mix weight is, and I just put that amount. And it was probably about a cup less than what I have for this jar right here. The other thing is that cake mixes are being sold in a smaller amount. They have reduced the amount of the ingredients for a cake mix in the boxes now. So if you had a box from 10 years ago, and you would tell by lifting it up how much heavier it is than today's. The box sizes are the same, but the ingredients inside are less. So if you have an old recipe, this would probably be just fine. And I am just going to go ahead and use the full amount. If I find that it is too thick, I can always thin it out with a little liquid, but I've made this before and it worked just fine. So I need 4.5 cups of this mix. So this is a half cup scoop. So we got one, and I gave this a really good shake and a really good stir before I started, because sometimes things can settle, and I like to make sure that they are all incorporated in there. So there is 1 cup in there, 2 cups, 3 cups, I'm kind of letting it fluff around a little bit. 4.5. I think I measured that correctly. All right. Okay, so we've got our cake mix in our bowl. Move that out of the way. Get some of my dishes moved out of the way. Then, all right, so I was getting ready to move on to the next ingredient, and then I remembered I'm making a double batch. So I need to add 4.5 more cups of my cake mix to this bowl because for 2 it's going to take 9 cups. So I'm going to be quiet for a second and measure these out. 9. Okay, I counted those correctly. So now I have the right amount for 2 bundt cakes. Now this is going to be a big bowl full, but this is a large mixer, so it should be able to handle it. Okay, now I need to add a box of vanilla pudding, instant. Well, I get the bulk at our Mennonite store. They sell bags of the bulk vanilla pudding mix, and it's a lot cheaper than Jello pudding and all of that, and it tastes just as good in mixtures where you're baking with it. So I always use this kind for baking. If I need an instant vanilla box for eating, like in an eclair dessert or something, I usually will buy Jello brand. But for baking, this works just fine. So I am going to need 1 package for 1 mixture or 1 bundt cake. So here in this bowl, I have 2 boxes, or what's equivalent to 2 boxes of instant vanilla pudding. All right, I've got that in. I'm going to give this a little stir so that the cake mix and the pudding mix will get all incorporated together. And let's see if I can do it without giving a big puff of flour. Did it. Now to this, we need to add water and oil, and you're going to add 3/4 cup of water. And so I have a 1.5 cups right here, just of regular water, room temperature or cold. Then you're going to need to add 3/4 cup of oil, any kind that you prefer to bake with. So I have 1.5 cups of oil. And I have my spatula right over there, so let me grab that. All right. We need 1 teaspoon of butter flavoring. Now this is optional. If you don't have butter flavoring, don't worry about it. I happen to have some. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons in my mixture. We are going to be having that butter crumb mixture in there, and that will give it a lot of flavor, that butter will. We're going to need to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and I'm just going to substitute that for my vanilla paste. Just about empty. I'm getting low. So I'm going to need 2 teaspoons. I've got a lot of vanilla, so I will be using the rest of my regular vanilla. Just a little more. And I added a little more because my cake mix does not have the added flavoring, and so I usually add a little more vanilla or whatever flavoring I need when I'm using my cake mix. But I've got my vanilla beans soaking, making another batch, and I've got a big jar all ready to use, so I'm good on vanilla. I'm going to give this a mix and just get it nice and wet. I added 1/4 of a cup of water because it was pretty thick, and I don't think it will be as thick with cake mix. So now I'm going to add 4 eggs for a single batch. That means 8 eggs for a double batch. And so this is gold right here. Are the prices of eggs going down where you live? Sometimes we can get them under $6. We can find a few local places that we can get them for $4, but crazy prices. So I think I'll put 4 in here, and then I'll add them one at a time, and then I'll add another 4. So I'm just going to turn this on, add an egg at a time, let it mix well, and then add the next one, and so forth. Okay, so I got the eggs in. A few of them tried to jump out of the bowl. I think I just have too much in here. But I got the eggs in, and it then said to mix for about 6 to 8 minutes. And I probably mixed for about 5, and I think it's good. Be sure you do scrape down the bowl in there to make sure that everything's mixed in and you don't have anything sticking to the bowl. And now we are ready to put this into pans. This is a really rich tasting coffee cake, and you can tell by the eggs, the pudding mix, the cake mix, the flavorings that it is going to taste delicious. So I am going to take this out here. And now the hard part is trying to get these 2 pans equally filled. So let me get this out. The other hard thing is getting the mixer cleaned off. So that is always a hassle too. But we'll just do the best we can. Sorry about the noise. I might just mute that out so you don't have to hear that banging. Okay. Put that in there so it won't drip. Now I need a towel. There's my egg yolk right there. And over here. They were hopping. Okay, so let's just scrape it down one more time. Mix it by hand. A really rich looking dough, especially with our brown eggs. They were really dark yellow. Okay, let's see if I can get this into our pans evenly. And I just like to kind of pour around. And we're going to fill them with half of the mixture. And then we're going to put the crumb topping for the layer in the middle. And if anything, make the bottom layer a little bit thicker. If you're going to err on that side, because I find that the crumb topping does have a tendency to sink just a little bit. Now we have all this crumb topping. And this is what really makes it good. Let me rinse my hands. Okay. Just get a little spoon here so I could easily put some in each one. And I am just going to layer it evenly on this layer. And if you have some left over, put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it, and just use it on muffins or anything else that you're baking. It makes a great topping too for if you want to make a little bit of a cobbler. Just put your fruit and then top it with this, throw it in the oven, and it's an easy little topping for some fruit, kind of like a French apple pie without a crust, and then whatever fruit you like. Good for a cinnamon roll filling too. You want to fill cinnamon rolls with it. It is a easy to use crumb filling. And I think I am going to have some left over because I need to make sure I don't overfill my Bundt pans. It looks like I have probably a cup or two left over. So I'll know next time when I make it, either I can do less or just I'll have some in the freezer to use and I won't have to mix any more up, because I think that would be good for just a single Bundt cake. Okay, now we've got to top it with the rest of our batter. And again, I've got to make sure I get it distributed evenly. And we don't want to overfill our pans. The rule is usually about 2/3 full. Just make sure it's all completely covered. And of course, this batter will rise and cook up. Like I say, always err on the side where you put more batter at the bottom, because the crumb, it didn't really sink too much on my last cake, but crumb toppings and streusels usually will go sink down. And so if it's farther up in this pan, because you're going to flip this pan, you won't have it all the way on the top of the cake sticking out of the batter. All right, now I did grease and flour these pans good. Anytime you're working with a Bundt pan, you need to make sure you really get in all the crevices and then flour it on top of that. That way you can be sure to get them out without them falling apart. So hopefully I did a good enough job. And I think we are ready. So here they are, ready to go into a 350-degree oven, and I'm going to be cooking them for, it says 40 minutes, but my oven takes quite a bit longer, so I'll let you know when I pull them out how long it took. This pan right here is a darker pan, and it will tend to brown quicker than this one, so I'll have to watch both of them, and so we'll see how long they take. I'll bring you back when they're ready to come out of the oven. Okay, I just took them out of the oven. This one came out about 5 minutes earlier, and it just sinking just a little bit, but that's fine because this is the bottom. And then this one just came out. It took a little longer. It's a little bit bigger. And mine took about 65 minutes. And again, my oven is not as hot. It bakes nice and evenly, but and then I also might have had more batter than what one cake mix would have made. So here they are, and they're going to cool. Okay, so what I am going to do is see if we can get this out. I let it cool off more than I wanted to. It's just barely warm right now. I usually like to have them a bit warmer so that they will release from the pan better. And I just am using a thin steak knife, something that's kind of flexible, and just loosening up around the edges. And when you have a solid, heavy cake like this, or a pound cake, kind of shaking it a little bit in the bowl and letting it kind of use its weight to pull it. Yeah, there. And what I've got here is I've just got a plate and I've got a piece of parchment over it because I'll probably be moving it to something else to carry it in and to haul it. We're just going to set it right there. And that looks perfect. And you can see the crumb layer right in there. So we'll do the other one the same way. Loosen this one. Voila. And there is our other one. I will just glaze them with a powdered sugar glaze, just drizzle it on the top and then cover them. And then we will take them with us on our travels. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. Also, don't forget to like and share. I would really appreciate that a lot. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment box and I will try to answer you. And thanks again for watching. Hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.